Hello and welcome back to the Bobby and Beardy Show. I'm Bobby and that gentleman over there is still McBeardy. We've been gone a little bit. We had a break post-Christmas. I was doing some DIY. Christmas period is busy. January, some films came out. We've seen some films. But today, we're going to talk about flight risk. I will ask, as it's been a smidge, Beardy, how are you? Are you well?
I'm good. I spent a lot of Christmas relatively unwell, whole health issue thing. But other than that, honestly, yeah, good New Year, good new Christmas. I said that. Yeah, good times, all in all. How about you?
Yeah, not bad. I spent the Christmas period moving into my new office, which is the old spare bedroom.
Yes.
You might not be able to tell because it's more or less the same background, apart from you can see a shelf of Lego. And the wall isn't green anymore, it's white. But everything else is more or less the same. Brilliant. Flight Risk. Here we go. Here's the rundown. It's an action thriller directed by Mel Gibson. Had no idea about that, as I was saying a second ago to you, until the credits rolled. Controversial Mel Gibson. 9 years after his last film, the acclaimed Hacksaw Ridge, this is quite a small follow-up film. It's almost like a little warm-up gig before he does Passion of the Christ 2, Electric Christ-Aloo. So we'll see how that goes. The film stars Mark Whalberg, Michelle Dockery, and Topher Grace, who, I kid you not, I didn't realise his real name was Christopher, and he just goes by Topher. I just thought he had a weird name. UK release date 24th of Jan. It's a 91-minute runtime, a tight 91. It must be a 10 out of 10 for me. Bobby thumbs up for sure. Budget of 25 Australian dollars. No, it's American, obviously. 25 million. And only a box office a couple of days. It had an opening weekend at 12 million, so it's not doing incredibly. Could tick on, but based on the other reviews we've seen, it probably won't. Beardy, do you want to give us a little, what's the story?
Okay, so this is your standard Topher Grace's character is running from dodgy people and the law. He gets found in a little dodgy motel room. He's very scared, as you would be rabbiting away from both sides of the law.
Is there a CGI moose involved?
Yes, there is. Oh my god, I forgot about that until just then. Oh my god, that is... Honestly, how much of the budget was spent on that?
That was so unnecessary. Just get a moose head and tap it against the window. Why are you wasting the budget on a moose?
Or a moose. Like, an actual moose probably costs less than a CGI moose. Anyway, you're derailing me. He needs to get taken back to the big court case to get rid of the big bad. And you know what? Madeline is going to get him there. She is the US Marshal who has a sordid past, which never really gets mentioned properly at all.
It gets brought up once in one conversation.
Very badly. They need to get from Alaska back to Seattle, I think, if I remember right.
Alaska to Seattle to New York, yes.
Yes, and they obviously need a pilot. They can't do a standard charter because that's too easy. They have to do this dodgy little tiny charter.
What happens to the other two guys, by the way? Where did they go? There's three of them who find Topher Grace in... I'm derailing you again, but they find him in his little hut. A moose is outside. That moose must have disappeared instantly when they turned up, by the way. I wouldn't have gone to the door with a moose outside. They're huge. And those two other guys, just never seen again. Never seen again.
Yeah. They hop on the plane. They've clearly not checked who's flying it, where they're going, what's really going on at all. They know nothing. And this is where creepy Mark Whalberg gets involved. And can you trust him? Well, clearly no. The trailer instantly shows no. So we kind of know the whole story straight away. Yeah.
Literally every single aspect, more or less, is given away in the trailer. So it's basically it's marketed on it's Mark Whalberg, but he's a crazy bad guy. So.
And he's bold now.
You know he's evil because he's got a weird hairpiece.
And yeah, that's basically it. Like all the turns. Like, so before we go any further, I want to say that this style of film I really, really like. This idea of there's one major location, there's a small amount of people. I think it's a good premise when done right. Things like Beardy did it quite well, and I think Phone Booth does it spectacularly. That means it has a lot of harsh criticism coming from me. That's what.
Fair enough. I think the security is incredibly lax for a very important witness being taken to federal trial, and they don't even bother to check the guys who he says he is at any point in time.
Yeah. Like they instantly didn't check any credentials. Just like, oh, you come to this plane, you must be the person. Oh, you
Yeah.
can fly as well. Only 2 people in the world can fly planes.
Maybe they should have seen the other 2 guys had been killed by him, and they were meant to be the guys doing the checks, and he killed
maybe.
them, and that's why he kind of got through. And she just assumed everything was fine. I mean, you're terrible at your job, regardless.
Yes.
Only 26% of the 85 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are positive, so it is getting slammed. I would argue slightly too harshly, but I think I enjoyed this film more than you, Beardy, but it's certainly not incredible. We'll get to the thumbs up, thumbs down rating in a bit. I know what yours is going to be already. I did find myself chuckling a few times. I would argue this film isn't a thriller like it kind of wants to be. I think it's mostly silly Billy nonsense. I think it knows it can't really be a thriller because Mark Whalberg's being too weird, and they've also given the entire plot away in the trailer. As I briefly mentioned, it does market itself completely on. Look, it's Mark Whalberg. He's the bad guy. But unfortunately, he is still Mark Whalberg. He will always be Mark Whalberg. It's nice to see him shake it up a bit. My memories of Mark Whalberg are essentially just in the Transformers films he did at this point, and they're not good. So I managed to block most other things out. I would say Mark Wahlberg's character essentially just reverts back to just doing the same rape threats more often than not.
Basically,
regardless. I think Michelle Dockery and Topher Grace are pretty solid in their roles. They don't really have that much to do. But I do think they hold the film together. But ultimately, it's only 90 minutes, and it drags in the middle. So
I think you're absolutely right. Mark Whalberg playing Mark Whalberg, but creepy Mark Whalberg. He somehow still misses the mark. I think,
but his hair, surely.
Dockery, she's just so unrelatable. Like, she's supposed to have this big backstory, and like that's why she's gone out of the US Marshals and then back in, and can she be trusted again? And I just don't have any connection to that. I don't feel anything. I don't care. All the people she's talking to. There's 2 runaway people in this film for me. Topher Grace's character, I think, is quippy and funny, same way he was when he was Eddie Brock in the Spider-Man movies. You know what? He's just same way he was in that 70s show. If I'm honest,
enjoyable. I liked him.
Yes. And I cannot remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays the on-the-phone pilot, Hassan, was hilarious.
Oh, he's good.
He was brilliant. I've got no fault with that at all. I think it's a tactic as well to calm people down. Like, he keeps making these little jokes, inappropriate or not, to diffuse the situation. You're now on me, not forgetting. It was so well done. I think he's good. I expected so much more controversy around him, and he's just a nice guy. Hope he's a dad. He can be the first 2025 best dad.
Best dad award of the year, regardless of actual parenthood. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'd say this film kind of feels like a bit of a 90s throwback. And it kind of maybe makes sense considering who the director is. Big 80s action star Mel Gibson, but like he's done other bigger, better directed movies and things before. I agree with you. I like a small, like, in a location premise where, you know, they're kind of stuck. Instead of sometimes films end up going all over the place, and you're barely taking a moment to breathe. So you're stuck in there. But I do feel like this film is kind of shackled by its own premise. They're stuck in a very small plane. They can only do so much, and essentially it's kind of a bit of a fight, a bit of a scuffle. Someone's tied up. Bit of a scuffle. Someone's tied up. Bit of a scuffle. Someone's tied up. It's a bit repetitive, and I did find myself kind of relieved when we were getting towards the end of the movie, because, like I said, it does kind of drag a little bit in the middle. There's a conspiracy going on as well, but it's kind of
it's a throwaway storyline. It just doesn't have much gravitas. That's the issue.
There's some stuff going on. I'll talk about it in spoilers, I reckon, just to avoid the one potential little bit nugget that they haven't given away in the trailer. So we'll hold on to that. But I don't think it's spectacular.
So
I think it's just about good enough.
I'm inclined to agree, because you know what, the premise is good and it has potential, but it falls into that cliche in films like this and action films in general of bad decisions. The movie of every time something like Topher tries to get the US Marshal's attention, and she's like, no, don't trust you, calm down, whatever. And then no one looks for the weapons that are strewn about, and no one makes sure that he's tied up properly, and everything is bad. And even right at the end of the game, we'll get to in spoilers, there are so many bad decisions made, and you make one of those decisions differently and everything is fine.
Yeah,
you made it harder for yourself.
She kind of treats Topher Grace as if he's like this master manipulator, incredibly dangerous man who can achieve anything, and he's just an accountant, like who's quite mild mannered and shits himself several times. So she's just like, no, not talking to you, and he's like, okay, well, we could have solved some problems a little bit sooner. But I'm gonna go straight into thumbs, and then we can just open discuss. I am gonna give it a thumbs up. I think it's generous, but it's not a thumbs down movie for me because it is only 90 minutes. There is some things about it. I did quite enjoy Mark Whalberg occasionally, and I did laugh along. I had quite a full cinema when I watched this film because there was only like one showing at a decent time, and it was quite full, and people were chuckling along at it. It's not really a thriller; it's more of just a silly thing. Yes. I will give it a thumbs up.
So I'm going to give it a very harsh thumbs down. I think I am being harsh, but I do think you're right. It thinks itself as a thriller, but it's not. It misses a couple of the key elements. It tries too hard to make Wahlberg creepy, but it does it in a very ineffective way. Topher Grace, like I say, I think he did great in his little quippy comments, and his storyline is nice. I don't care enough about the US Marshals at all, any of them. Decisions are bad. Everything is bad. Weird moose. So bad.
Weird moose. Yeah, the final thing before we go into spoilers, as we were talking before we started about January releases and how it can be a weird time for movies. And if you compare this to like last year's January release, I think it was January anyway, The Beekeeper was Jason Statham.
Yeah.
It's kind of another silly little action premise thing, but it's just so much better. So if I'm comparing apples for apples kind of thing, then this is terrible in comparison to The Beekeeper, which is a lot more fun. And it's a similar release, kind of like just get some audience into the cinema. Anyway, spoilers. There's a gross scene where Mark Whalberg snaps his thumb but breaks his thumb in some handcuffs, and yucky, to escape again for the 15th time. And then the conspiracy. There's a conspiracy. Yeah. There's a mole. There's a dirty rat in the Marshals. Who's it going to be? It can only be one of two people, and it's solved about halfway through the film. And then the rest of the film has to continue.
But it's solved somehow still a bit too late. She's already made a bad decision, which ends up getting her friend, the person who got her back into the US Marshals after her harrowing issue 7 years ago. Well, how many years ago it was. This woman has trusted her. It's like, no, you get back on the horse, you do your job, we trust you, I trust you. And she's like, something's wrong, it must be you, and you will get killed for this. Yeah.
Another bad decision she made in the past, by the way. She handcuffed a woman to the toilet and she got burned alive. So great
there
stuff.
are a few other steps between those two things, but
there's a Molotov cocktail involved. But witness protection and stuff. But it's like you just make repeated bad decisions, don't you? I don't think you should be trusted in the field. Yeah, it's one or two people. It's either her friend or the incredibly dodgy sounding boss. And then
the US Marshals.
Literally two phone calls. This happens in about 5 minutes or less than.
Yeah.
She rings her friend on the satellite phone, and then she's like, I'm a bit suspicious of you. She rings that person's boss and goes, I'm a bit suspicious of this person, hangs up, and then immediately goes, oh no, actually he's the bad guy. And then we just have to wait for the rest of the film to finish.
All this happens. She heard some information about 10 minutes ago that she didn't really listen to because she doesn't want to listen to Topher Grace's character because he's clearly a big bad guy rather than just a dodgy accountant.
He's the worst human person.
But yeah, like I say, it's like he sees straight away the flight license isn't the same person, tries to tell her, she says no. Then the knife gets dropped, which kind of leads to Wahlberg getting out the first time. All the bad stuff, like Topher was straight away, kill him. Like, he's trying to kill us. You are completely within the right to kill him. She's like, no. Everyone survives on my flights.
I don't have a track record of people dying at all.
Yeah, and again, her just the fact that like she's a U.S. Marshal. Topher gets stabbed twice when Mark gets out the 15th time, um, and she's like, let's just put a kitchen towel on that.
No pressure. He's just like, okay, I'll just lean against this window, I guess.
Yeah, like she would know better than that completely. The plane crash scene is bad at best. I don't understand why there's this thing where emergency vehicles on the runway have to sprint behind it rather than wait where it's going to stop.
Directly
and
behind.
Crisscross. And crisscross.
Yeah.
So they get hit by plane parts. They get hit by Mark Whalberg.
That's oddly comical as well. Like Mark Whalberg ends up falling out of the open door, rolling on the runway, trying to stand up. And then just getting hit and going. He has a goofy like look at his face, and he gets mowed down by a fire engine. It's like what?
And all of this culminates with two of the worst paramedics trying to get Topher out of the side cockpit because she doesn't pick up his legs until he's basically out anyway. He's been dragged. Don't know why that's a thing. Madeline gets out of the plane, sees Hassan. There's this little lovey moment, which is really quite nice. We like Hassan. Hassan is the best part of this entire movie in my head.
Agreed.
Topher's stabbed character gets put into an ambulance, and I'm sorry, I've never been a policeman or a US Marshal, but I understand that there is a chain of custody, and you do not just let this person out of your sight. She's like, "Well, Hassan's here. We've got to go for dinner.
Got to go for dinner."
You go to the ambulance, and you go to hospital, and there's definitely not someone who's going to sort of try and garrote you or choke you with a plastic bag.
Shiftiest looking man in the history of cinema walks past, and she's like, "Hang on a second." Yeah, she's a terrible cop, quite frankly.
Terrible cop, yes. All of this happened because she's bad. Topher should sue.
Topher should sue. Dear, oh dear. Right.
Oh my god.
That's Flight Risk. We're done.
That is Flight Risk, yeah.
Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll be back with more stuff in the coming weeks as things come out and the season starts to kick back into gear. After January, we're going to do 1 minute reviews still. Beardy's going to get those horror ones covered for me.
3 coming this week.
I'll do some more of the others, and you can do some more of the others as well. I don't have a monopoly on them. I do. Every time he suggests him, I hit him with a hammer. Like, no! Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Farewell. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.